Most people own a cinematic powerhouse and carry it around in their pocket on a daily basis. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, my name is Pierce Dillon, and today we are going through 5 tips to shooting better iPhone video. Now keeping it simple, we're going to just be covering the inbuilt camera apps, so no third-party apps or anything like that. I want to try and keep this video as short as I possibly can and not drag this out. So getting into it, tip number 1 is utilize the inbuilt camera settings. Now the iPhone uses a variety of frame rates, including my go-to, which is 4K at 24 frames per second. This is considered the cinematic film style frame rate that you're gonna see in most Hollywood movies that come out. The iPhone also lets you shoot at 4K 60 if you want. Now most entry-level or mid-level cameras can't even shoot at 4K 60, so that's a big plus for this. Like I said, my go-to is 4K at 24 frames per second for any video that I do shoot on my iPhone. You can also choose the slow-mo resolution and frame rate. Now I use 1080 at 120 frames per second. I find that that's more than enough for any B-roll that I do shoot on my iPhone. However, you can choose 1080 at 240 frames per second if you want to catch anything in super slow motion. I also turn the grid on here, which is going to help you with your composition, and we will go into that one a little bit later. Going into formats, I use the most compatible setting just to avoid any compression. As it says, 4K at 60 or 1080 at 240 frames per second is going to use the high efficiency mode. Basically, this is just going to reduce the file size by compressing it and using a different file format. Anything that was going to be shot at 4K 60 or 1080 240 is just going to be a really big file, so hence why it compresses that file for you. Tip number 2 is the exposure and focus lock. Now, if you shoot most of your video on the iPhone, this is going to become your best friend. So the iPhone is notorious for jumping around with focus and exposure when you are trying to film. So to activate this, when you have your video camera open, if you press and hold the subject on your screen, it's going to lock that focus. You can then slide your finger up and down on the screen to adjust that exposure. So this is massive because you don't want that focus jumping around, then going home to edit your video, finding out that your subject has lost focus halfway through the shot, and then doing what we Australians like to refer to as spitting the dummy. Tip number 3 is making use of all the lenses that your iPhone has. If you're lucky enough to have the iPhone 11 Pro, then you have one extra lens than I do. I use the iPhone XS Max, which has the wide angle lens and a telephoto lens. Now, I can't say this enough, do not use the digital zoom. There is no zoom on that lens. All it's doing is just enhancing and zooming into the picture that you have on your phone. It's obviously just gonna pixelate that image and look crap. So if you want that slightly zoomed in shot, then use the telephoto lens by hitting the 1x button on the screen, which will change to 2x, aka the telephoto lens. I use this lens quite a lot when I'm shooting with the iPhone, and it gives you that nice cinematic look as well. So as I said, if you own the iPhone 11 Pro, you also have an ultra wide lens. Lucky you, don't want to talk about it, let's move on. Tip number 4, going back to when we turned that grid on, this is going to be using the grid to your advantage. So a very basic lesson in composition, we're going to be talking about the rule of thirds. What the rule of thirds is cutting the screen into thirds both vertically and horizontally, exactly as the grid does when you turn it on. It's then going to be placing important subjects or important elements of your shot along those lines or intersections of the grid. So as you can see here in this shot, I've placed my subject on one of the 4 intersections. I've then also placed the horizon on either the top or the bottom horizontal line there. So what this is supposed to do is draw more attention to the subject in your shot. It is just a guideline though. I really like symmetry when I'm shooting video and even taking photos. So occasionally, depending on the shot, I do place that subject in the very center of the shot. It's completely up to you. Like I said, just a guideline. But while you've got the grid on, use that grid to your advantage. Tip number 5 is the accessories that I do recommend to go along with your iPhone. So you've obviously gone out and spent the money on an iPhone, and if you don't want to go and drop money on a DSLR and get caught in the downward spiral that is trying to attain and own every lens ever made possible, then there's a few accessories that I do recommend to go along with your iPhone. The first of them is investing in some sort of grip. So this doesn't have to be a gimbal or a stabilizer. I own a grip that is made by a company called ShoulderPod. It's very well made, it's nice and affordable, and what I do like about it is that you can attach it to a tripod or a GorillaPod for shooting time lapses or just anything with a tripod. They do make some really fancy stuff, so I will leave a link in the description to go and have a look at them. I definitely recommend checking them out. The next accessories that I would recommend having a look at would be the detachable lenses that are made by a company called Moment. So they make a heap of different lenses that fit the iPhone, and if you don't have an iPhone with 2 or 3 lenses, then bang, you've got access to ultra wide angle lenses and anamorphic lenses. So for the quality you are getting, they are worth the money, and I'll include a link in the description if you want to go and check them out as well. So there you have it, 5 tips to shooting better video on your iPhone. I'll also include one extra tip here, and that is when you're shooting, turn on airplane mode, because it's slightly annoying when you miss a shot because someone calls you halfway through a shoot. So that's it for this video today, guys. Please like and subscribe if you're feeling this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.